it's a lot of work, and navigating a crazy business is the short of it. But I have to book a lot of my own shows, like 95% of them. And if you look at the schedule up there at BrandonMaddoxMusic.com, I'm pretty loaded up with shows. So that's a lot of time in front of the computer and a lot of time mapping out where we want to go, and a lot of time on the phone with different places saying, no, we're not having you, or we're not having live music now, or whatever. You get a lot of no's before you get that one yes. And so it takes a lot of determination. And, people will ask me, and then they'll try to do it, and they're like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't have to call places all day long.
That sounds like hard work.
Yeah, really playing the show is the easiest part of it. Yeah.
What were you doing before you started doing music?
I was working a job doing data entry.
Okay.
And so I was, thinking, well, I might want to actually do this and like let music be on the side and all that, and then because they were going to start paying me some good bucks, some good money. And then things changed, and I decided that wasn't for me, that job wasn't for me, and I decided to start networking around town, or actually I had networked pretty seriously up to that point. And I went to some bars and said, I can bring you some hit songwriters in. I know so-and-so has had such and such of a song, and so that was my jumping off point into doing music full time.
So when you make that decision to go music full time, I got to imagine it's a little bit of stress involved with that. I mean, that's a big decision. That's something, I don't know if it was just you at the time or if you were married at the time, but something, of course, you try to take into consideration. Obviously you have to have living expenses. You have to be able to make it. What's it like when you finally make that decision to make a big, giant career change and a big, giant career move? What's the feeling like that?
Yeah, it was definitely a feeling of being, what am I going to do if this doesn't, take off? I've always been someone who's always, I guess, looked at the big term, long-term picture and saved for the rainy days. So I had some margin of comfort built up before I made that decision. And then when I did, I knew I had X number of days and weeks to be able to try to make this fly. So it wasn't like, okay, I'm paycheck to paycheck and I'm jumping off and doing it. You have to count the costs first. But it was stressful. It was me by myself at the time. My wife came along later, and I just decided that I was going to go for it and make this thing happen.
When you have younger artists that are just now getting to the point where you were a few years ago and thinking about making that full-time move, or really thinking about devoting themselves to their music, I'm sure a few of them have come up to you and asked, hey, how did you get to that point where you were able to do it professionally and do it as a full-time job? What kind of advice do you give those guys?
Yeah, well,
and girls too.
Basically, kind of like what I said, it takes a lot of devotion and it takes a lot of work, because many people think they're just going to get looked at and picked up by the next booking agent that comes along, or the next management, and it takes a long time to get a booking agent. It takes a long time to get management and PR is now where they charge for PR services. So it's something where you've got to have some money built up to even enter the business, and you have to have the work ethic of an entrepreneur trying to build his own startup business. Because if you don't have that strong work ethic, then you probably shouldn't even try, because you're going to spend just enough time to see you don't want to do it, or you can hit the phone to say, I'm going to make this work come hell or high water, and if I get a bunch of no's, it's like sales. I'm just going to keep plowing ahead.
Now, you're a guy who's made your way over to Nashville. You've made some inroads into the Nashville community as well, and everybody, I think, in country music always thinks, I'm going to Nashville. That's where it is. That's where I'm going to make it big. I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore. I feel like that was the case years ago, where it was like you go knocking on doors. You've gone a little bit of a different route, and I think touring and being on the road and building your fan base around different areas outside of Nashville isn't necessarily a bad thing, and that's kind of the route in which you've taken too, with also still getting those feet in the door in Nashville.
Yeah, absolutely. When I moved there, it was to be a songwriter, not an artist. So I moved there for that aspect, because Nashville is very much of a songwriter town. So my goal was to have these songs recorded by big name acts and be the man sitting at home collecting the paychecks and writing the songs. So that was my goal, that was my aim. But then the industry changed a lot when I was there. When I moved there, it was where you had more of a shot at that. And now things have changed where you don't have as much of a shot at that. So now there's no real reason to move to Nashville to be an artist whatsoever. My advice is build your fan base up well before you ever move up there. Get 5,000 likes on your Facebook page at least. I mean, that changes all the time. It's a moving target. But, get bunches and bunches of likes. Get that social media rocking. Until you do that, they won't even look at you because you have to create your own success